Okay, are you ready for it? Photoshop's quick mask mode. I think you're really going to like this. A lot of people fall in love with the quick mask mode. This is arguably the easiest way to create selections and masks inside Photoshop. And the reason why it's so easy to work with is because we're going to be creating selections, or in our case here, refining a selection simply by painting with Photoshop's Paintbrush tool. It's that easy. So, I wanted to show you the color range command in the previous exercise, but normally when I'm showing this, I suggest to start with some kind of a selection. You could use the magic wand tool or the color range command, of course, or really whatever you want, just to get a rough selection, and we don't want it to be perfect because we're going to refine it in the quick mask mode. So I hope you're ready for this. All right, what I'd like you to do is hit the D key on your keyboard, and that will ensure that your foreground color is black and your background color is white. And the next thing that I'd like you to do is either click on this button just below your color area there inside your toolbox, or simply hit the Q key on your keyboard, and that'll flip you into Photoshop's quick mask mode. Now, whether you know it or not, we're inside the quick mask mode here. What happens is we lose all of our marching ants, and the marching ants are replaced with this red color overlay, or this red ruby lith. And how it works is areas that are covered by this red ruby lith are not selected, and areas that appear normal, like most of my Buddha, are selected. Now, what's really cool here is as we're refining our selection and as we're fixing it up and making it perfect, we can flip back and forth between the quick mask mode and the regular old Photoshop mode just by tapping the Q key on our keyboard. So there, I'm back to marching ants, I'm back to the regular old Photoshop, hit Q again, now I'm back into the quick mask mode. All right, now during this process, I should warn you, there's going to be a lot of zooming in and out. There's going to be a lot of flipping between the regular Photoshop mode and the quick mask mode. There's going to be a lot of painting and erasing and things like this. So let's get started here. I'm going to hit the B key on my keyboard, and what that does is that flips me over to the Paintbrush tool over inside the toolbox. And what I'm going to do is zoom in on my Buddha statue, nice and close, maybe something like this, 200%, or maybe even a little bit closer. And we have two areas that we need to touch up inside our image, the inside of the statue and the outside of the statue. So earlier, if you recall, I said I didn't want the background selected at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start filling in the background area with red. So in other words, I want the background area here to be completely filled in with red. So how do I do that? Well, how it works here, and you'll definitely want to write this down because everybody always forgets this. When we paint with black, that's going to add to the red ruby lith, thus removing or subtracting from our selection. Let me show you what I mean here. So I have black as my foreground color down in the color area of my toolbox. I'm on my paintbrush tool. From the options bar up at the top, I'm going to go and crank up my brush size nice and big, maybe around 40, 45, or 50, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting. And what happens here is you can see it appears that I'm painting in red, even though I have black as my foreground color swatch, right? So as I'm painting along here, maybe I'll just do sort of the edge of this book here. This is actually an Oxford English dictionary here. Something like this. And then if I go back into the regular old Photoshop mode, I'll just hit my Q key again. That whole area is now filled in. So in other words, I just removed that entire area, the spine of this book, from my selection. And again, this is painting with black. So again, painting with black adds to the red ruby lith, the red overlay, thus subtracting from the selection. Okay, great. I hope we have that straight. I'm going to go back into the quick mask mode just by tapping the Q key on my keyboard. And now what I'll do is I will switch and I'll start painting with white, which will subtract from the red ruby lith, thus adding to the selection. Does that make sense? So painting with white is going to remove the red overlay, the red ruby lith, and add to my selection. So, for example, I'm going to try doing the Buddha's face here, and you can see there's some red in there. So that is areas that are not selected inside my statue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the X key on my keyboard, and what the X key does is it flips the foreground and background colors for me. So you want to make sure that white is in the foreground. So now we're going to be painting with white, and all I'm going to do is paint over top of the Buddha's face. In fact, I'm not even really being careful about it. I'm just kind of scribbling over top of his face, just kind of getting rid of all these red areas. Something like that. Okay, now let's go and check our work here. I'm going to hit the Q key on my keyboard again, and all the marching ants, well, it looks like I missed a spot right over his eye there, but most of the marching ants anyway that were in his face are now gone. Let me give you a better example. I'll just pan down here a little bit. We have some marching ants in here, and he's wearing this beaded necklace here. I'll hit the Q key. Sure enough, I can see a lot of red in there. I'm just painting over top of that. Again, I'm painting with white to get rid of that red rubylith overlay. Something like this. All right, great. Just giving you a quick example here. Hit the Q key, marching ants are gone. That's how it works.